Stage one is the page that literally does not say what the company does. And I would say this is 95% of B2B software companies, especially if they sell to the enterprise. You could find yourself having scrolled 10 slides down of a website and you still have no idea what the product does. If you could just get to the end of a screen and say, wow, I totally understand what the product does, that's like you're already in the top, 5%, 1% of companies. We love the B2B site for how specific and clear it is. And then there's like one level higher, which is not only do you explain what it is, you do the harder work of positioning it for a specific group of people. Interestingly enough, if you scroll down to the next section, we get this video. What does Adam do in this video is actually position it and basically say, this is the core problems. These are the key alternatives that this replaces. So this website video right here is doing the heavy lifting of the positioning work. The big thing that I think comes up on this site is, if I just say, what is Slack? You say, well, we help salespeople. Not enough. People will say, well, help them with what? Because I think people read homepages, they're just looking for like what and how and why answers.
Well, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Unfuck My Startup. Today, we are joined by the king of homepage positioning. He's the founder of Fletch, a consultancy that helps B2B software companies find their ideal positioning and create a beautiful new homepage. Today's guest is Anthony Pierri. Anthony, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm big fans of Adam and our B2B for a long time. We love his approach to, I should say your approach, Adam. I forgot. You are still there, even though the video's off.
I am still there.
No, we're big fans of how open behind the scenes Adam is sharing. Everything you share behind the scenes, like the build in public stuff, is super cool. And the fact that you're not afraid of some controversies. And, we sometimes get embroiled in our own controversies, calling out some larger companies for things that we think they shouldn't do. And we're big fans, and thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Hey, man, I'm really excited about having you on today because this topic is near and dear to my heart. B2B, this is not the case for B2B, but retention.com. Man, like I had this horrible problem with the homepage where I had lawyers and people inside of my business saying to not be explicit about what we did. And then I had everybody in the Shopify ecosystem who I talked to telling me to be very explicit about what we did. So I don't know if there is an answer to that. I think you just kind of have to decide what side you're going to take. Eventually we took the side of the ecosystem and ignored the lawyers. But I'm really excited to dive in because I get it, man. Like, it was so annoying to walk around and have people not know what we did. Like, they'd just be like, dude, I hear you're like going like crazy. Like, what do you guys actually do? Like, I look at your homepage, I have no idea,
Yeah.
So, and by the way, I think that is a problem that more people have than they know.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It is a pervasive problem. I shared this with you guys, before we got on the live part of the webinar, but really, I think there's kind of three stages of homepages as they relate to positioning, right? So stage one is the page that literally does not say what the company does. And I would say this is 95% of B2B software companies, especially if they sell to the enterprise. You could find yourself having scrolled 10 slides down of a website and you still have no idea what the product does. So that's like the vast majority of people. And we will never run out of clients because there's always new startups coming out looking to the big companies and saying, I got to do the same things as them, and adopting all the same horrible practices that they have that end up with these super vague pages. In the middle is people who say what they do. They say, this is exactly what the product does. They're like pure explainer. And that to me is almost perfect, right? It's like, if you could just get to the end of a screen and say, wow, I totally understand what the product does, that's like you're already in the top, 5%, 1% of companies. And I know this was framed as a roast of the B2B website, but it's not quite a roast. But I would say B2B is firmly in this middle camp, which again, it's not really middle, it's top quartile. We love the B2B site for how specific and clear it is. And then there's like one level higher, which is not only do you explain what it is, but you do the harder work of positioning it for a specific group of people in relation to the alternatives that they might choose, specifically why it's better. And you don't sort of leave it up to the imagination. You're very, very explicit about saying it, right? This is what we replace. This is the problems that it solves. And so I would say probably our B2B is in between those, maybe 1 and 2. And so, when we get to that point, I'm happy to share some potential strategies that I think could help make the RB2B from a A- to a ideally an A+.
What I'm going to do, I'm going to share the screen of the new RB2B website. We just launched this. We had No Boring Designs make it. They did a great job, as Anthony said. So this is going to be a lighter roast than people usually like. I know with roasts in general, people like when folks get destroyed. Don't worry, we'll do that to your websites later. So can you, Anthony, can you see my screen here?
I sure can.
All right, cool. As a reminder, folks, Fletch and Anthony's team did not build this website. So we're going to get kind of the rundown based on how they formulate, template, craft their own homepages and positioning. So, Anthony.
For sure. So honestly, like I was saying at the beginning, the fact that I can read this page and understand what the product does, you're already in the top of the top, in terms of B2B websites. Hardware companies, B2C companies, they don't struggle with these problems. B2B software companies do because it's inherently very flexible and can cover a lot of different use cases. You can't hold it, right? There's no Amazon product page equivalent where it's like I can rotate the product, see it. I do think that the perfect B2B page would be as clear as an Amazon product page, but that's very, very rare. So the big thing that I think comes up on this site is there is never an explicit mention of what problem it solves. So there is a lot of functionality, capabilities, which we love, but you don't actually get the core problem statement of like why this matters, who is it for. Ideally, we can get hints and we can imagine that people coming will see different reasons that they would want this, but it doesn't necessarily take a stake in the ground of like, this is primarily who this product is for. And that's usually what we think makes the difference between an A- and an A+ is actually calling that out. Interestingly enough, if you scroll down to the next section, we get this video. What does Adam do in this video is actually position it and basically say, this is the core problems. These are the key alternatives that this replaces. So this website video right here is doing the heavy lifting of the positioning work, but we all know that most people do not click videos. And a lot of people will just jump on, they'll give it a scan, and they'll try it, especially in a PLG context like this, where you can start for free. When RB2B launched, we tried it immediately because I was like, no freaking way. Like, this can't be real. Get on there. I had our old co-founder, or the old founder of the business we came out of. He went on our site, and I'm like, you popped up. So it was crazy. We were testing and stuff. We ultimately were not the right buyers. We don't do any outbound at all. So we churned. And I think that was, Adam, you shared a bunch of examples of this, of some people will come on and they will churn. Now, again, is that a problem? Potentially not, right? This is a type of site, and even the launch of our B2B, the fact that so many competitors jumped in, follow on, I think the virality of it, even though a bunch of people tried it and churned, I think actually it was helpful because it was just that many more people who could understand and could explain, you've got to hear about this crazy site. I just tried it. And whether or not they actually built it into their workflows, I think that was fine, right? So I think my first question for you, Adam, is, and I'm going to steal the screen actually back. And it says not allowing. There we go. Okay. First of all, I just want to know, do you actually have any level of positioning problems? We have this handy little thing on our website. When you see these are the 5 most common ones that we see. Do any of these check the box for you? Because I would just be curious to get your take. Sometimes we optimize things that don't need optimizing.
Okay, so I think that the second one definitely applies now. You mentioned that there's a lot of, new competition.
Yep.
And it's strange because it's like a bunch of people doing the same thing but other stuff also,
Yep.
So it's a weird thing to try to wrap your head around. So there's that. And then Yeah, I think that's maybe a little bit of 3, but I think we just don't articulate like an agency program
Yep.
very, very clearly anywhere. So that's the one that people ask.
Yep.
But yeah, I'd say it went. I mean, you said it perfectly. It's like we showed up, there was nothing else like this, so it wasn't like, here's why you should use us, to like,
Yeah.
okay, now there's like 11 or 20 or 50 different ways to get this
Yep.
along with all this other shit. Like, why should I just use yours? Right.
For sure.
And there are reasons,
Yep.
but it's not for everybody, which is, and I think that was like a huge problem. The flood of everyone trying it and then a lot of people realizing it's not for them is why churn was just horrible, last year, and is getting better now. So anyway,
Do you feel like there's any level of education for the folks who are like, because there's on the site, you say stuff like, don't know where to get started. Our onboarding folks will help you build out the flows. Like, what level of people are like, this is so cool? I remember that was a problem for you at the beginning, was like
yes,
people didn't know what the hell to do with it. Do you feel like you've crossed that barrier and the people you're going after would know what to do with it? Or is there still some amount of education that people are like, this is interesting, but what the hell do I do with these people?
there's education that still needs to happen.
Okay.
We're hoping to solve a good chunk of it through the product,
Yeah.
but still, like I would say the most common RB2B user is someone who is not necessarily crushing it with the product. They think the data is interesting. They maybe they can tie it back to definitive, revenue or not, but they still want to do it because
It's
great
interesting.
information. It's great information to have. And then the question that I get, which I need to come up with a really good answer for,
Yeah.
is, which I don't have yet, because I haven't like put the work in, is what are the most successful people? What are the most successful RB2B users doing?
Yeah.
Every single person who's in that camp that I described, which I think are most people at this point, but the product's just low cost enough to where, $149. It's like, yeah, like I want to know who my site visitors are and like, reach out to them. Right. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah.
No, that makes total sense.
Thank you for clarifying on that one. Cause
For
the
sure.
answer is yes.
Okay, for sure. So I'm gonna steal the screen, and this is not a me. I don't like just talking at people. So I'm only doing this because to explain the model of how I think you could improve the positioning, I have to first explain the model, right? Like, so I'll fly through these slides pretty quick, but this is basically the fruit of having done this with truly me and my co-founder with 400 companies. This is the latest version of our model that we think is the best that it has ever been and is the clearest. So to really, like what I was saying, bridge the gap from explaining what our B2B does to truly positioning it, you have to understand these two different concepts. We call them positioning anchors, and then the other half is the unique value, and you need both. So the positioning anchors are reference points. We always talk about positioning in relation to something else. So when you're explaining the value, you are constantly making comparisons to all different things. And what those things are, we call them positioning anchors. And there are two types of them. The first one is we would call it a primary anchor. And these ones are sufficient on their own to explain what is our B2B. You could just give it a single sentence and say, it's this. And then people would say, interesting. You're not actually saying the value or the differentiation or what makes you cool. You're truly just imagine yourself at a networking event and you give one of these three reference points, people will get it. So you can imagine like a company like Addio. When you're at the networking event and someone comes up to someone from Addio and they say, what's Addio? And Addio says, we're CRM. Bingo, we're over the hump. We know what Addio is. And now they say, interesting. Well, how is that going to be better than Salesforce? Or what do you do different than HubSpot? So the simplest way to position is just within a well-known category. But there isn't always a well-known category, or there's a new emerging nascent category. Like you said, Adam, when you launched our B2B, there was no person-level de-anonymization tool category that people could list off the top 5 vendors. Maybe it has matured for some segments, and now they could. But at the beginning, there wasn't. So you couldn't say, we're the very best de-anonymization tool on the market. We're way better than the other top 5. There's no Gartner quadrant or anything like that. So sometimes the category doesn't work. You actually have to position on a use case. Calendly at the beginning, they said, we're for scheduling meetings over email. Again, not answering the differentiation or the unique value, just truly answering what the hell is this thing? What did you make? naming the use case is the second best option of clarity. Third best option, what happens if you're in a new nascent category? You solve for a lot of different use cases. What do you do then? Then you can look for an adjacent alternative that does the same use cases as you, but is not in the same category that you want to play in, and you replace it. So you think of someone like Slack. Slack says we're an email replacement. Email has a bunch of use cases for a lot of different reasons, and Slack was replacing them. Slack was not an email client. They were not saying we're the best email client, don't use Gmail, use Slack. They were saying we're something new. So those are the three like main categories. And then you can flesh it out a little bit more with these, we would call secondary anchors, which just make the story make more sense, right? You could say it's for small businesses or for salespeople, but they can't stand on their own. You need one of those three, a category anchor, a use case anchor, or an alternative anchor. If I just say, what is Slack? You say, well, we help salespeople. Not enough. People will say, well, help them with what? And even if you layer them, right? ADIO helps salespeople in small businesses. Helps them do what? We can't talk value differentiation unless we get over the what is it hump. So, you want to combine both primary and secondary to answer the what is it question. For us, Fletch PMM is a product marketing consultancy category anchor that helps marketers in B2B software companies, both secondary anchors, company and persona, position their products, use case anchor. So we have two different primary anchors and two different secondary to get you a relatively clear statement. A couple other quick things about these anchors. These anchors, like I said, they are not optional. You must include a primary positioning anchor for positioning to take place. You also have to be specific about these anchors. If I tell someone, hey, my software helps you run your business, people will say, what does that mean? Right? And I'm like, I just told you the use case. We run your business. But again, it's so vague that it doesn't matter. Or if you say, we're a software company, like that might be fine if you're explaining to your grandma, right? But not a customer. There's, well, what type of software? And then a lot of people say like, yeah, we take traditional tools, we replace old school legacy systems. You're like what? Right? You have to be specific enough, or it's like as if you didn't use any. And then from there also, some anchors will only appeal to certain people. So we worked with this company called Freckle, and they were an alternative to Clay. So they positioned against Clay saying we're a Clay alternative. That only works for people who know what Clay is. So you can only pick anchors knowing that they're going to have implications of which segments would actually understand what those things mean. Not everyone knows what Clay is, and so that's not going to work for people who don't. So once you have the anchors out of the way, then you could talk about the value. And this is essentially, it's the combination of a specific customer problem with your differentiated way of solving it. And so what we basically do is we list out anchors, and then we decide, where does the problem live? And you take the problem and you attach it to one of the anchors. And whichever one you attach it to will create a fundamentally different positioning strategy. And so you could take this with us. I added in one extra anchor for us. Fletch PMM is an alternative to brand agencies. We're a product marketing consultancy that helps B2B software companies position their products. So I use three primary anchors. If I attach the problem to the alternative, I get one narrative. Brand agencies help shape your brand across all segments, but won't determine your core ICP or help clarify your product's key value for them. Fletch fills that gap. We specialize in product positioning, help you explain your product's value to your most important customer segments. So that's one narrative. But what if I link it to the category? Most product marketing consultancies provide lots of different services, content, launches, etc., but they don't specialize in any one of them. Fletch focuses exclusively on product positioning with a proven process honed over positioning projects with 400 software companies. Or you could link it to the use case. Positioning your product is incredibly difficult because teams are too close to the product, lack a shared framework to align in the basics. Fletch brings outside objectivity and a proven framework to help your team align on who you're for and why you're better. Now, when we were weighing which narrative do we want to tell, we were thinking along these lines. And we ultimately picked this one because this one in the middle, product marketing consultancies, the market for product marketing consultancies is pretty small. There's not that many people shopping and comparing against different product marketing consultancies. So to say, here's why we're the best in a category that nobody's really shopping for, didn't make sense to us. This one also didn't quite make sense. This is probably the largest TAM of the three. There are more people shopping for brand agencies than who are trying to position their products. This is a huge, huge segment, but tons of education, tons of shifting to get people to say, I don't need new logos, fonts, and colors. I need to work with Fletch on this new thing called positioning products. I don't really know what that means. So this didn't really make sense for us either. This one was the one that matched both a good enough size that we will never run out of clients for our size business, but also that is pretty much greenfield. And we were like, yeah, we totally could go in, and people are trying to position their products and struggling. So we're going to go there, and we linked it to that use case. All right. So that's my monologue. Any questions on the framework or anything I could clarify before I jump to our B2B?
Dude, this is so good. I just am dying to ask you one. I'm dying to ask you one question.
Ask it.
Okay, so here's what I want our B2B to be, and I think
let me
it
hear it.
can be our B2B.
Our B2B.
So I want to be the fastest, easiest, simplest, most cost-effective path to ultimately actioning your anonymous website visitors, right?
Yeah.
And that makes sense to you, but I don't think it'll make sense to everybody who's looking at our website. So in why I think that's over here versus over there now is because if you look at people like, let's say Warmly, right? They're gonna pass our growth. They have 70 employees. I have 3. I'm not really worried about it, but like the product that they're building with those 70 employees is incredibly complex. It takes tons of time to onboard. It's this end-to-end solution, you know, and it's a convergence with Koala and Common Room and Unified GTM and all of these other prospecting tools that are trying to do 1,000 things for you. I want to do this one thing really well. And there's parts of it that we're not doing yet. Like, I think we need to just be like filtering for you and making AI messages and then automatically sending LinkedIn connects and messages and emails out. And it's such low volume that we don't need to do this inbox rotation shit like instantly. That's ultimately where it's going. But like, I want to be something that is stupid simple, the lowest cost in the market, and that 100,000 businesses could get it. Why would you not want that? Right. To like identify your anonymous website visitors and then automatically hit them up with something that's contextual to what they were looking at. Right.
Yeah.
So
no, that makes total sense.
And I'm not sure exactly how to say it in as concisely as possible. Right.
For sure. And that like ideally, like let's try. We can even try to map this out. So when I pulled over, and I've got the RB2B site here. Let me move some stuff out of the way. See, we probably don't need this. I live and breathe in Figma. It's like our main product that we use every day. Okay, so like I said, depending on the level of maturity of group that we talk to, different things will get emphasized, right? So let's take a use case based narrative for a second. So I'm gonna move. We can look at a couple of these and then see what things. So for example, to use a use case anchor, we always are trying to harness existing energy. So what we don't want to do at this level, you may want to do this higher up the funnel with education and stuff, but what we don't want to do at the primary product positioning is convince people that they need to do an activity that they're not already trying to do. Again, you may do that as demand gen somewhere higher up the funnel, but Figma is not saying this is why you should do product design. This is why product design matters in their primary positioning for the champion of the product. They're assuming you're already doing product design at some level and then saying this is why we are better for that specific use case. So to do a use case, they have to actually be trying it. So if I say, for example, either trying it or considering trying it, I should say. So when I look at this use case, let's imagine that the use case of our B2B is to identify and convert anonymous web visitors. Are your core constituents trying to do this before they start using our B2B? Or is our B2B the first time they've ever seen anonymous individuals come to life?
Now it's the first. It was the second. But now I'm kidding myself if I think anybody hits our site now and they're like, wow, how is this possible? Right.
Do you think though, is that, and I don't want to push you down one path or another, right? Like truly just think of me like a financial advisor, where the financial advisor is like, how risky do you want to be? You want to put all your money in mutual funds? You want to put it all in Bitcoin, right? Like, do you think that, and could this be because of your audience, the people you reach on LinkedIn have already tried these things?
Right. Yes. That
okay.
That is what it is. You're right.
So because if we did a TAM analysis and we were like, and you were trying to be a VC backed guy, which I know I'm not in that camp, you're not in that camp. But imagine you were, and you were like, is the TAM big enough of people who actually have done this? Maybe the answer was no. There's probably lots of people
like
who've never done
my,
this.
My accountant in Texas does not know that she could be doing this.
Yeah. But your best customers, you think, do?
I mean, the people, it's like you said, the people in my audience, this B2B software, which it was just kind of like fell into our lap as the first TAM because
Yep.
of LinkedIn.
Yep.
I think they definitely know. And the only market I'm doing right now is posting on LinkedIn, so I'm still sort of in this B2B SaaS world. But I think the product that I described that doesn't exist yet that we're building is very useful for a lot of different people outside of that TAM.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And they may not know that the person level is possible yet. Like, I think the company level companies have marketed to them pretty heavily.
Yeah.
But I don't think the person level they probably know exists yet.
For sure. And the thing along those same lines, right? Is like, let's imagine that you were saying, and I'm gonna cut this one. Let's imagine you were picking people who weren't. Like something like this would be a way that you basically would say, well, if I go after people, maybe there's people who are doing an adjacent activity that I could improve by adding on anonymous website visitors, rather than saying you've been trying to anonymize or de-anonymize your website visitors and you run into all these challenges, right? You could choose a broader one where you basically say, like, the anchor is following up with high intent website visitors. The problem, right? They look at page views, email clicks, site visits, but these workflows only work for the known contacts, right? And so basically, what's your differentiation? We flag these anonymous ones, and it's like, whoa, I didn't know that was possible, right? But maybe your audience is further along than that, right? You could even think about it like this, like an even more immature one. The use case is going to be routing inbound leads to the right rep. It only works on people who convert, right? Who fill out the form or whatever. There's all these ghost leads that don't ever get assigned. We can basically show you who they are, and you can build that into the place. But it may be that the bulk of your people, and we even talked about those problems, positioning problems, are the ones that are trying to figure out why you over Warmly, why you over 6 Cents, or whatever it might be. So I think we would probably say it could be a use case based narrative, or it could be, right, an alternative based narrative, or potentially even a category. And I would say, are people, like you said, I don't think this category makes sense because, like you said, I don't think people are positioning this capability as a standalone category. They're often bolting it on to their broader one. So it's not like, oh, here's the 10 best person level de-anonymization tools. So it's probably not this. And you may not want to, you probably wouldn't call yourself an ABM platform.
No.
So this probably wouldn't work either. So we probably are more looking at either a use case based narrative or an alternative based narrative. And some of them showed up in your the video that you did, where you were like, we replace products like 6 Cents, and what was the other one that you said? Zoom Info, maybe? No, Clearbit.
Yeah, Clearbit, exactly.
And you basically were saying they only identify at the company level. We identify at the person level. I don't know how old that video is, but even how you're describing it now, does this still make sense with where the market is at today?
So, like, I think probably the people coming through my LinkedIn content, no.
Mm-hmm.
But and honestly, if I'm thinking about the mass market outside of that, the true mass market, they don't know what 6 Cents and Clearbit is either. Those are like very specific to B2B SaaS softwares.
For sure. And,
like,
and you know,
there's this, by the way, there's this overarching problem statement with all identity that I think is so good. It's like 98% of your traffic is anonymous, of your web traffic is anonymous, right?
Yeah.
Like, and there's so many different ways to take that statement. It's like, oh, you spend so much, but basically all you're doing is spending money and time trying to get traffic to your website. I mean,
for sure.
what are we doing right now? Like, we're not getting traffic, but we're like trying to, make it work better once it's there. So
yeah.
No,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
But to your point, right? Like what I would basically say, and I know we want to get to some people's sites, but like what I would do would be to weigh some of these elements, right? We would basically say, is this, by the time, the way that current traffic lands at our B2B site, is this the story I need to tell? Or is something like this the story I need to tell? Or, you could even say maybe it is truly, it's not a category, but it's just other tools that have and this is going to really test my spelling, de-anonymization, right? And basically say, like, I think there's two versions of it that probably, based on your current traffic, make the most sense. Would be something like this, where you could anchor it against the tools, and you would effectively say, these tools, where's the problem? It lives in the tools. They force you into their platforms or whatever it might be, right? We could build out all these core problems of these tools, and then basically that would set you up to give a version of that narrative you talked about before. The fastest, easiest possible way, built into your workflows, lightweight, all that stuff could live under this. And it could also potentially live under this, right? That you could say the problem is more in the use case itself. And so, like, I would see these as basically two twin versions of your positioning, where you would basically, it's really, how bold do you want to go? Do you want to point the gun at physical brands, or do you want to say it's so difficult to build out these de-anonymization workflows, and you have to string together lots of tools and, things, and you're balancing credits here and there. And so it's less about like the vendors themselves as your enemy and more just the difficulties it is to pull all these things together. And then effectively the differentiation becomes, our team will help you build this perfectly out. We'll build it into your system. It runs on autopilot. We can make it all tailored to what you need to do. That's one story. The other story is you point the gun, and I know you've had fun legal battles with some of these companies. Maybe you point the gun and you say, none of these other effing companies, right, like, have their shit together, and they're all screwing you over, and it's more the vendors themselves are the enemy. So I think this would be, to me, either one of these would be a viable positioning strategy, and then you would want to see that show up throughout. You would basically embed problem statements, unlike the other tools that do this, or, this is a very difficult thing to do because of X, Y, and Z. We solve it because of A, B, and C. And I would pepper in the problems of the alternatives. When we get down here, we start talking about how does it work, rather than just truly explaining, here's how it works. You do it in relation to the negatives of the other alternatives or the use case, wherever you put the problem. But then I would really think about, like, long term, is your growth really going to come from these spaces? Like, if you think about these different segments, right? I don't know the relative sizes of these, right? But if you think about it, you're like, what level of people are actually trying to identify and convert anonymous web users or website visitors in the aggregate? It might be relatively small, versus if you were to pick, like you said, the provocative statement, 80% of your traffic is anonymous. So you find people that are not doing anything with anonymous traffic. That actually may be a way bigger market. And again, you're not VC backed, so you're not trying to become $1 billion company. Maybe both of them can get you to 10, 20, whatever the next big milestone is for our B2B. But that would be the types of questions I would be asking myself based on which one of those things to do. Because if you think about, like, the OpenAI and Claude's, they're fighting each other, but they never position that way. They always position against the old way of doing things, Googling and how horrible that is, and getting you into these next gen things. They're not, obviously they're in a fast release cycle against each other, but they're not running like in the way that Samsung runs ads against Apple, like making fun of Apple and stuff. Like, these companies are not doing that. They're sort of doing the blinders and just letting everyone in their same category do whatever they want to do. And it's a land grab. Who can get more of the vast ocean before the other one?
Yeah. So what should I do?
Good. And this is you, the founder, right? Do you want to win that small pond, or do you want to go for the big one? Again, a lot more education with the big one. Like what did you say? Your uncle in Texas or whoever?
Yeah, my accountant was
your accountant, right? They're not thinking about this stuff, but it's greenfield versus hyper competitive market over here. It's like convincing people to use cryptocurrency who've never thought of cryptocurrency versus people who have Ethereum and, all the different things and are like, well, why would I pick your blockchain over? They're just different markets with very different narratives.
Yeah.
I want to also.
Okay. So can I'm wondering if you have an opinion on this.
For sure.
I think I have incredible marketing leverage with this B2B SaaS group, but I really don't think that it's like the least appealing category or buyer group.
Yeah.
It's so competitive. Everybody's, they are doing this like incredibly technical stuff. Like in this basic value prop, it appeals the sort of simplest, fastest, cheapest way to get started with this one signal that's the most valuable,
Yep.
whatever, like that appeals to a lot of them. But again, this other market I'm talking about, like they would never buy any of this other shit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And they would buy something that just filtered their website visitors and poked them on LinkedIn or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, how would you coach someone through that? It's like
Yeah.
I got, it's like I have to compete. It's like I'm way ahead of the competition with my marketing in this
Yeah.
category, this group that I hate. Then I got to go compete with my advertising against everybody else in this other market where my product's probably better.
Yeah. I mean, and that's where it's like you as the founder, and this is why we tell people. So you just laid out two very different 24-month trajectories, right? Like 24 months building a business to sell to the accountant in Texas. Like you said, the most important signal, people not in our little corner of the world don't know what a signal is, right? Like you go on Reddit and you read about Clay. Like you go on LinkedIn, you read about Clay, and you're like, Clay must be the greatest company in the
Yeah.
history of the universe. You go on Reddit and people are like, this fucking thing sucks. Like it's like,
Yeah.
what is this overpriced garbage? Like the real world, which is billions of people, and our corner in LinkedIn are truly two different realities.
Yeah.
But again, very different 24-month trajectories. Do I want to go build distribution in a place where I don't have distribution to get in front of an audience that has never bought this type of thing, playing the long game, that I think I can unlock all this new value in all these legacy industries that are not even thinking about signal-based outbound or anything? Or do I think I have such a strong brand on B2B in SaaS, in LinkedIn, that my brand will sort of carry the torch? And I think it really could. How high will carry all that stuff? Those are different questions. But this is why we always tell people, because people will say, well, why can't we just A/B test it? And I'm like,
No, okay, for 10 years. Good luck.
yeah, that's awesome. So we're going to split reality into two different timelines. We'll A/B test it. We'll check back and what happened when Adam ran that way, went west for 2 years, and what happened when he went east, and we'll figure out which
Yeah.
one was better by the conversion rate on the website. So, right, like the homepage, we always say it's the place where the strategy gets documented and shared, but it is not the place the strategy get executed, right? And this is truly why, if you like, people sometimes will get with founders and like, I can't pick, I can't make the decision. What am I supposed to do? And I'm like, this is why you became an entrepreneur. You could have been an accountant. You wouldn't have to make any long-term bets. You just be an accountant and there's no problem. So it really is founder intuition. It's gut. It's where do you feel like the market is going? Where's the opportunity? And imagine yourself the next 2 years. It would be like, just from my perspective, it would be hard to leave behind the success you've gotten on LinkedIn. That would be pretty difficult.
I agree. And I think there's this other dynamic, which I didn't include in my prior explanation, where almost all of our competitors are venture backed. So they're
Yeah.
forced to keep increasing the complexity and price of these products,
I love that.
which really makes me attracted to being this dead simple thing that does one thing that, like, if you're not ready for that other shit, you just like sign up for free and you
Yep.
get it. And it's just like, if you pay, it's $149,
Yep.
you know?
And again, right? Like, would you, because I know you have e-commerce background, retention is a completely different group, right?
Yeah.
So you probably
that's
have some
much
cred.
harder than writing LinkedIn posts to market to that. Much. Those distribution channels were much harder than this stuff that I get to do over here.
Yeah, it is like, as someone else, our entire business is built on the back of LinkedIn impressions. So it's like, for me, I'm like, oh, how could you ever leave it? But again, if you're thinking long term, what would it take to invest to get real distribution in other industries where there's literally no competition at all? I don't know. You probably have to do some research on that, of like, what would that even be? Would it be cold calling? Would it be cold outbound? Might not be content. And it would just be very different. And maybe you have to hire AEs and reps and stuff. But again, it's like, does that fit the business model you've built? I don't know. It could.
Good. It's all very nauseating to me.
Yeah. And this is your what, third business you're running? Aren't you running 3 of these? Or something
like all of this, it's like all of these, like, no right answer. Like, another thing that LinkedIn loves to do is lie to you about the fact that there's like a way to do something.
For
right?
sure.
But then you start having a deep conversation with someone who really knows about literally anything. And you're like, there's 5 equally compelling paths to go down. and I have no idea which one's the right one. And like, no matter how far you are along in your journey, and this is my experience, the anxiety from that never changes. It,
Yes,
it
yes.
always feels like shit. Like,
Yep.
I'm sure that everyone on this call, almost everyone, would love to have both of my businesses.
Yeah.
Telling you today, it feels as much like shit as it did 7 years ago when I was stuck for the 3rd year in a row at 3 million ARR. And it's because of stuff like this, right? It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, like marketing to accountants sounds like something I should do, but like, who's going to build a fucking cold call operation? Like, I'm not going to do, I don't know how to do that. You know?
Yeah, totally. And right, that is the challenge of all this stuff is it's so and we used to like when we started, we only worked with early stage companies. And we were like, man, if we ever work with big companies, this will be so different because we could just look at the data and make a decision. Like there's lots of big positioning people who are like, just look at your customer calls and that'll tell you what to do. But then we worked with like massive, like 150 million ARR companies or bigger, right? Like Fortune 500, Fortune 50, and they are in the same boat. It's just way bigger scale. And they're like you think of like the decision behind saying, let's rebrand Facebook to Meta and position for the metaverse. Like there's no way to A/B test that by looking at the conversion rate of a social network site and a VR company, like the decisions never go away. It's the basis of entrepreneurship. It's why you can make so much money and why there's a 95% failure rate.
Yeah. Yeah.
With that, let's tear through some of these these homepages. So folks, feel free to I have a couple teed up. Tammy, I got yours. And let me go ahead and share my screen. One just interesting thing I want to mention before we go into this. I feel like I mean, you started getting into these really big decisions that you have to start making as a founder that's like really spawned from a positioning standpoint. And I
Yep.
just want to highlight how like the homepage is the tip of the iceberg here.
Yeah.
You see a lot of people asking for like email templates to be their next big growth, thing or whatever. Like if I look at your templates and the way you were templating out those problem statements and those different things, Anthony, it was like the thing that you had to figure out was like 90% of that template. Like the other
Yeah.
filler words don't really mean anything. It's you
Yeah.
having to decide exactly who we are, what we stand for, who we're up against, what we solve, how we make your life better, all of those things.
For sure.
And I unfortunately think most people, when they go to launch a campaign, what they do is think more about the infrastructure and how they're going to get their message out to as many people as possible, but they don't think about the message as much. So with that, let's dive into here. I'm going to try to keep it straight with like all the different URLs coming through. But Anthony, why don't we dive into this first one if you can see my screen?
Yeah, maybe for simplicity, should we just do maybe just the first scroll?
Hero. Yeah, exactly.
Just the hero.
Same thing. Perfect.
All right, so I am looking for anchors because again, you can't have a value conversation unless you first answer what the hell is the thing. If I come to you and I say, I'm going to make you $1 million a year, want to sign up? You're like, what is it? Like, I don't even know. What are you selling me? And I'm like, I just gave you the outcome. Why don't you want to buy? Don't you want $1 million? It's like, no, we have to answer what is it. So I'm looking at stuff like this, trying to evaluate what the hell is this thing. So I'm just going to read it out loud. Getting data and AI consultancies with 50 to 20 people sales ready. Okay, so we're in some type of use case. Getting sales ready is something. The revenue foundation for your first sales hire needs to succeed. We install a tested marketing, sales, and success playbook so you can forecast revenue, onboard clients faster, and free founders from random act selling. Okay, so this is not half bad, right? It's clearly a service business. They are selling this playbook. There seems like there's a little confusion, maybe, because you're like, this is the revenue foundation your sales hire needs, but then you say we install marketing, sales, and customer success. And then you start talking about some different use cases, forecasting revenue, onboarding clients. We have this problem of like random act selling. This feels like there are several positioning narratives that you are trying to weave together, which is making it kind of confusing. So I'd say, relative clarity is okay. I'm getting hints at what you do, but again, I don't know if this is primarily for sales. I don't know if this is a broader thing. So I think that I would probably work around the clarity there of like, is there more specific, or I would assume that this is because there are multiple things that you provide and you're trying to lump them together. Good things are that you are trying to tell a story and you've highlighted a problem and stuff like that, but it doesn't all feel connected. So that'd be my thought on this one.
All right, moving over to Red 9.
Okay. Unlimited DBA support. Your SQL Server perfected unlimited DBA support, continuous optimization, 24/7 monitoring. Red 9 handles it all, so you can focus on your business. As rated by 100. Okay, so again, I don't know this space enough offhand. I'm not your buyer, obviously. So questions for you as you're evaluating this would be, are you in a known category? Right? Is this something that people buy? Is this like, in the same way I could say, here's the top 3 CRMs, Salesforce, HubSpot, and then maybe, you know, like these other follow-on ones, like, you know, whatever you might include. Because right here, right, unlimited DBA support, continuous optimization, 24/7 monitoring. Are those table stakes or are those differentiated? And I think probably it depends who you're talking to. So I'm not positive if it's software or if it's a service. I see services at the top, so maybe it is a service. But yeah, so you can focus on your business, I would avoid that type of stuff, right? These like, so you can get back to what matters. Like, I don't think anyone cares about that when they're reading homepages. They're really just trying to understand, like, what is this thing? You know, will I need it? Will it be better than what I have? What problem does it solve? I wouldn't do those like more aspirational, like kind of emotional stuff. I would stick more because I think people read homepages and they're just looking for like what and how and why answers. So I think I would use this space to be like, you know, again, I don't know enough about the space to really tell you if this is like clear or not, but those would be the type of questions that I'd be asking. Am I listing differentiators or table stakes? And for whom, right?
I still think there's a lot like this one and even the last one. There's some like vague stamp of like the foundation,
Yeah.
expected, like really, you know, kind of maximalist, but super vague kind of
Yeah.
things. I do want to give a shout out to the Beats by Dre parody logo for Red 9.
Oh, I didn't even realize that. That is good. That's
By
great.
the way, I also like that domain red9.com. That's pretty good.
It's
This is
cool.
well done.
All right, sales motion built for sales reps, not prompt engineers. All right, we're getting a little positioning narrative coming through, even in the tiny little eyebrow. So that's fun. AI powered account intelligence, insights and signals, powering sales from rep to exec. Drive more pipeline, close more deals. I would go right there, cut those out. Those highest level outcomes will literally be on every page. That is wasted space. Any software for salespeople ideally is going to drive more pipeline and close more deals. Also, we could go on. I could talk about this for many, many hours. Your software is not going to close deals, right? It's not. So we can stick to things that are true and leave out the lies. So that's number one. All in one. So real-time signals, deep account insights, all in one easy to use platform. Sales motion agents. Okay. We got agents in there. You got to have agents in 2025. Monitor your accounts across the entire internet 24/7 so you don't have to. So again, this is similar to the conversation we were having before. What level of maturity is this for? If this is for people who know what signals are and know what agents are and know about using these things, you're not actually giving me a differentiated argument of like, you know, why you over Clay or use your gems or any of this slew of products that are doing this. And if I don't know what agents are or signals, this is not really explaining it either. So you're not doing a great job differentiating for the mature audience of like, this is what really makes us stand out among the sea of tools that do these exact things. And you're also not really explaining why you to the people like the accountants in Texas of like why they would want to get these types of things. So I think I would put my flag in the ground somewhere and be like, no, we're going to compete in the mature category and say why we're different. Or I'm going to put my flag over there and be like, let me explain to you what a signal is, because you don't know. And it's probably going to have to be one or the other.
All right, let's do 2 more. Let's do this one, and then I have my last one teed up as well.
Sell video, fulfill video, keep 100% of the profit, all without lifting a camera. Magnify gives your agency powerful video marketing tools in a white labeled SaaS system that you control. Launch with existing clients, unlock new revenue. There's another one, right? Unless Magnify is going to Venmo me money, Venmo is not, Magnify is not unlocking me new revenue. Unlock new revenue and retention immediately, scale it to everyone. So I don't fully understand what this means. Video marketing tools, I know what that means, I think, But again, I don't quite know what type. Like, what are we talking about? Is this like Adobe Premiere? Is this Goldcast? Is this like what does that mean? Video marketing tools is a very broad category. When I showed those examples of like vague anchors versus specific ones, this falls more on the vague one. So I think I like that you say it's for agencies. I don't really understand the rest. Okay, know who's ready to buy and how to convert them. Go Audience helps consumer brands find high intent buyers, turn them into customers using credit card spending data of 220 million consumers. Target better audience to score and identify traffic, personalized engagement all in one. This is pretty good. This probably is the strongest one of the ones we've seen so far.
Great.
Very clear. It feels like you're making a strong argument. I see some nice logos there. Yeah, I think the only thing I would say here would be the same we talked about here, right? Like what is this replacing? Is this replacing manual effort? Is this replacing other tools? I would just add in some of that like alternative type stuff of showing or even just saying the problem that this mainly solves. But this to me passes the set of like, this gets us into that second one where it's like, I truly get what it is. I get who it's for. I get how it works. You could just get it even better by just pulling in some of those other positioning elements.
I wanted to mention like how important what you were saying, and we'll wrap up in a second, but like the not having this like really way long tailed and super definitive like close more deals with this video software type of thing.
Yeah,
be very realistic about their expectations. That's how they're going to use that to evaluate you after they buy, and that's really important.
for sure.
Anthony, this is like, I mean, this was
incredible. What a
Thanks.
workshop. This was so awesome. So I have Taylor's pretty good at workshopping. I have my SEO guy, Sam Dunning's gonna be coming on in a few weeks. I'm gonna send him this and be like, you better show up with something like this.
Thank you guys so much for having me. This was a blast.
How's everybody get in touch with you?
My LinkedIn, for sure. Anthony Pierri is just, how it's spelled somewhere. You could find it, Pierri. And then the our website's fletchpmm.com. And I'd say those are probably your two best starting points.
I'm going to drop your LinkedIn into the chat right now so everyone can head over. They'll be able to find Fletch from there. So if you need positioning, I mean, Fletch is the best in the biz. And connect with Anthony. Anthony, we got to have you back, my friend. If you're open to it.
Honestly, man, this was great.
Awesome. This was a blast.
I would love to scheme on other sort of variations of this that we can do someday.
For sure.
And nail the promo. We got to do this stupid LinkedIn comment arbitrage as we're promoting, because when you do, like,
it helps.
More people show up.
Yeah. For sure.
Anyway, it's just this horrible game we have to play these days. Thank you everybody for coming. Next week, Taylor Heron on Cold Email. He's always a hit. So we'll see you then. Thanks, Anthony.
All right. Bye-bye.
See you next week.